Welcome to Facing the Canon. My guest on the program is Nick Hall, a remarkable, inspiring evangelist and the founder of the Pulse movement. Nick, welcome to Facing the Canon.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, I've wanted to have you on the program for a while, so I'm glad to have you on today. You're an evangelist. I'm an evangelist. There's going to be sacred synergy in this conversation, Nick. Let's begin at the beginning. Have you always known the Lord?
Yeah, so I came to faith when I was a little boy. I grew up in a home that was religious. I asked my mom when I was a kid, what happens when we die? And I still remember to this day getting on my knees by her bedside and giving my life to Jesus. Now, I wasn't always a saint. There was definitely the prodigal seasons of life, but I can say that since I prayed to put my trust in Jesus, there was never a season in my life where I didn't want everybody around me to know Jesus. So as a little boy, I couldn't stop telling people the gospel and trying to lead my friends to Christ.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, Nick, that the word enthusiasm is rooted in the word entheos, in God. So it's always like you can't be in God and not be enthusiastic.
Yeah,
But for
I agree
you,
100%.
and for me, we just like got very enthusiastic about our faith. When were you, or when did it become evident to you that you were an evangelist?
Yeah, so kind of the joke I'll say, J.John, is I had to go to church to learn not to share my faith. So I didn't know that Christians didn't talk about Jesus everywhere. I just assumed, because for me, we talk about good things. We talk about things that we love, whether it's sports, movies, or a good hamburger. We tell people when we experience something good. So when I was a teenager, I had a youth pastor. I was at a conference, and probably 4,500 students went to do community service. And the two options were community service or door-to-door evangelism. And so 4,500 did community service and 25 did evangelism. You know, and I was in the 25, and I was turning to my youth pastor and said, "Man, this is awesome." And my youth pastor looked at me kind of weird and said, "I think you might be an evangelist." And that was the first time that I kind of had heard that. But I was 18 years old finally when I surrendered to that calling for my life, and I've really been chasing after it ever since.
Do you know, Nick, we've not had this conversation before, but even though we have met before and spoken, but we've got very similar story. And that was the same for me. I was 18 when people said to me, "You're an evangelist." And I only just got converted, and I'd never heard of the word evangelist. And I said, "What does that mean?" And it turned
Yes.
out that I was already doing it like yourself, and then discovered that there was a term. Now, when you went to college, you were very fervent in sharing your faith, and you saw some remarkable things happen. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So when I went to college, at first I was going to play basketball on a scholarship, and so I thought that that was my life. And part of my call and surrender to that call to be an evangelist was surrendering that and saying, you know what, I'm going to quit the team. I'm going to go all in. I know that this is why I'm on earth. And when that happened, God started opening doors for me to travel with different evangelists. So I was traveling with Luis Palau and Billy Graham. And so I'm getting a business degree, but I would say my education was really coming from these evangelists and their teams. And so my sophomore and junior year, I'm at a university, a secular university, tons of students that don't know Jesus, tons of alcoholism, tons of suicide, substance abuse, all the things. And we are just crying out to God for revival on our campus. And out of this prayer meeting in North Dakota, which is a very rural, small state, it's the second smallest state in America, And I out of this prayer meeting, I wrote a paper in my English course, and it was my junior year. It was an English 320, which was basically your write your resume, write a proposal, try to have enough writing skills to get a real job, so you don't have to live with mom and dad.
Yes.
And yeah, so I wrote this paper, and it was titled Pulse. It was my dream to see God move on my campus. And it kind of just went viral. I mean, it turned into a student-led movement. We had 30 prayer groups start. We had 600 kids trained to share their faith. We ended up seeing 8,000 students come and hear the gospel, and 1,200 gave their lives to Christ. And so this was all just as students were like, what in the world is happening? And that's really how I got into ministry. So as a result of that paper and that movement, students all over the world started asking us to come and help them. And that's been 20 years. So for the last 20 years, I tell people I've never had a real job. I just kind of kept doing it.
That is remarkable, Nick. An essay that you entitled Pulse became a movement.
That's right.
That is amazing. And so, the question, oh, you founded Pulse, but obviously it was a God thing. And but tell us more about Pulse and how that developed and how that's led you to do what you're doing now.
Yeah. So Pulse, the word pulse came from when I was 18. Again, our similar stories. So like when God called me, and there was a prayer chapel that I used to go to when I was 18, and I just felt like God was speaking to me in ways I had never heard before. And there was this surrender. Like I realized that there was so many things in my life that I was living for that were vying for my attention. And so when I surrendered fully and said, God, I want to do what you want me to do, there was this statement that I felt like the Spirit gave me, and it was to put Christ at the pulse of a generation. And I felt like that was kind of the mission for my life, was to bring Jesus to the pulse. So where is culture? Where are people? What are people reading? What are people watching? And I think this is how Jesus ministered, right? It's meeting people where they are rather than asking them to come to where we are. And so, when I wrote the paper, the word pulse just stood out. And then as a result of that, me and some friends, we quit our jobs. We started to raise support. We basically said, man, we have nothing to lose. I mean, when you're 21, 22 years old, you're mostly sleeping on sofas. You're mostly eating macaroni and cheese. Things can't get much worse. So it's
Sure.
like, it's a low risk situation. And yeah, we just stepped out in faith and said, God, we'll go wherever you want us to go. And our initial prayer was, God, send us to people like us that feel your burden but don't know what to do. I want to reach my city. I want to reach my school. I want to reach my small town. And so that's what we did for the first 3 years. We'd go to small towns or different cities or different colleges. And then 3 years later, we moved to Minneapolis. But I mean, every year we'd see thousands of people saved, thousands of people trained. And yeah, now, 20 years later, we've done events around the world. We've seen 2 million plus people respond to the gospel. And it's been a crazy, where I am from, North Dakota, my whole state is 600,000 people. And so I never in my wildest dreams thought that we would be doing any of this. We didn't try to start an organization. I was never thinking in 20 years, I want to be on, a podcast, that I want to be, on television. That was not the plan. My plan was just like anybody else. I hope to get a job and make money. I hope to find a beautiful spouse, you know, but God, we make our plans and God directs our steps.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Nick, how would you describe what's happening in the world, but particularly, of course, in your own nation? And
Yeah.
and what's the diagnosis at the
Yeah.
moment?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think there's two very different narratives that you're going to hear right now. One is chaos of, war, division, anger, unrest. economic uncertainty, political uncertainty, health uncertainty, every uncertainty there is. It's like everything that can be shaken is. And then the other narrative is revival is happening.
Yeah.
I think that God is stirring, and that there is a wave happening now that I haven't seen in any of the years that I've done ministry. So it's like the last 2 years, I would even say starting last January of 23 until today. And I would say it's increasing now. I mean, we're seeing more people come to Jesus, more baptisms, more hunger, more invitations. So there is a genuine move of the Spirit of God unfolding in our day that isn't like anything I've seen before. And it's not something that I'm doing. It's not something that somebody else is doing. It's just everywhere, like everywhere you turn. I just saw a report of 300 being baptized in the ocean over Easter weekend, and then on college campuses across America, there's hundreds of students being baptized in college fountains and in the back of pickup trucks, and this is happening like every week. It's happening, and so it really feels like God is stirring. And again, so my vantage point, I always challenge people: listen, I know that what you see is maybe a lot of depression, but I want to tell you that God is on the move and He's inviting all of us.
Yeah, Nick, I totally agree with you. Even across this side of the pond, last Sunday I preached in a church. 69 people received Christ, and then following the two services that I did, they had 75 baptisms. But sometimes that's never reported, isn't it? It's like the
Come on.
bad news is reported. So we've got this situation, haven't we? Like you've just described. I suppose it's bittersweet. It's like there's more darkness, but there's more light. And Nick, so you're seeing and you are sensing that there is a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, I really believe that right now, and this is what I felt in my spirit last year, when the Asbury revival was happening, and when we were seeing revival breaking out throughout different ministries, different meetings all over the world, is I really felt like this word was this is an invitation. This is not more condemnation. And what I mean by that is I think sometimes we see God moving and we hear God moving, and in our minds we start to think, oh man, you should do this, or you should be a part of that, or like, see, you're not one of them, and you're not passionate enough, you're not praying enough. And I just think the voice of our flesh and the voice of our enemy is always seeking to steal, kill, and destroy. But I think the Spirit of God is ushering in this great invitation in our hour to say, this is for you. And so I see this. I see young people, especially, ushering this in. I see teenagers and college students. There is a fire of God that is spreading, and it's something I've never seen. So I really believe that for those that are hungry, God is doing something new. For those that want God to move, the invitation and the time is now.
Yes. Well, I so agree with you, Nick. I think the church for a while has been a bit like a sleeping giant, but it's waking up, isn't it? Uh, the one I really admire and respect what you're doing through Pulse, and I love the creativity and the way that you're using technology and social media. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so we really have two things we're trying to do. One is we want to reach the lost every way possible, and two is we want to unleash evangelists. And so on both sides, I would say it's young people led. They're coming up with ideas and creativity. I mean, so we have young leaders that have tens of millions of followers, and are trying to share the gospel. So we're helping them do everything from Bible trivia to social media programs to worldwide Easter broadcasts. So we just did this program. It was in 60 languages, 150 countries, and again, just because of the phone and because of the digital connectivity, there's no place on earth that the gospel isn't reaching. And so we're trying to unleash a generation to use every microphone possible to make Jesus known. And if the enemy is going to do what he does, to be loud about all the things of this world, we want to be louder for the hope and good news of
Yeah,
Jesus.
absolutely. One of your programs is Pulse 100. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so Pulse 100 is our effort to find young men and women with the call of God on their life to share Jesus, to be an evangelist. We got it from two sources. One was a quote from John Wesley, where he prayed for 100 who hated sin and feared God and would shake the gates of hell. And then the other reference is we're looking at Jesus' prayer and parable when he said that he's the good shepherd who leaves the 99 to go after the one. So we're looking for 100 who are going to go after the one. And so we are rallying and calling a generation to make Jesus known, to use their influence. So Pulse 100, how it works is people apply. They apply with references from pastors and leaders in their life. We want them to be connected and submitted to a local church. They're applying, letting us know their passion, their heart. They're also sending a 5-minute gospel presentation where they're sharing the gospel. We want people to be using their voice, using their skills to try to communicate Jesus. And then we welcome them in. So we've had hundreds and hundreds of people apply. Each year we get 100 that are in the program. They then are a part of a program with people from all over. They're welcomed then into 4 in-person retreat experiences and about 12 master classes where every other week they're in a master class online that happens kind of later in the evening so people can join together. And then everybody has a mentor and a coach. And it's about a 9-month program for people that are already in school or already in their vocation, or we're trying to come alongside them, not make it more cumbersome, but we want to bring these passionate called ones together and hopefully unleash what God has already put inside of them.
Oh, I think it's a great program, Nick, and I would encourage anyone who's listening to us now and you feel stirred and think, hey, I think I'm an evangelist. This might be an opportunity to sharpen and shape the gift that God has given you. So the future, Nick, I know you're a very expectant, positive person, but how do you view these years ahead and the season that we're in? So I know we've talked about revival a little, and I would love to see it. I know you would love to see it more and more. But as you dream about the future, what are your expectations?
Yeah, well, I mean, my prayer, I think any of us, I want to be faithful, and I'm just praying that our team would do everything we can. When God called me as an evangelist, and we started to set out into this, we were praying for 1 billion people that we could try to impact. And so I haven't let go of that prayer. That God would raise up voices and methods for us to be a part. But I would say at this season of my life, man, we're doing big campaigns and we're going to keep preaching, Lord willing, in stadiums and festivals and arenas. But I really believe we need an army. And I just know there's so many young men and women out there that are more gifted in many ways than I'll ever be. And so we're just trying to raise up, put wind in their sails, help unleash the dreams. Like, I think the best technology on earth should be used for the gospel. I think the best art on earth should be used for the gospel. I think the best movies on earth should be used for the gospel. There's no advantage that the world has over the spirit-filled believer who is looking at the God who made the heavens and the earth. And so I just believe that there's a generation coming. They're leaders. They're going to be, everything from, parliament members to senators to preachers to doctors, every sphere of influence, on fire followers of Jesus, to finish the Great Commission. I really do believe Jesus is coming soon. And so I just think we have to use every means possible and reach out. I love what you're doing, J.John, and I just think collaborative mission. How can we all point in the same direction? How can we shake the world with the gospel? I believe now is the time.
Yes, I agree that word is so important, Nick. Collaboration, cooperation. it's kingdom work, isn't it? And that's very important. And we want to commend and encourage everyone to enrich the church and extend Christ's kingdom. I think over the last few years, Nick, I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. Sometimes there's been the emphasis has been process, and sometimes the emphasis has been crisis. But of course, we need both process and crisis as well. But one of my observations is that I think we've got too process focused. Come and do a course. And of course, I believe in these inquirers courses. I'm very pro, whether it's Christianity Explored, whether it's Alpha. But I wonder whether we're giving people sufficient opportunities to meet Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, I think being sensitive and willing to change and adapt. I think we have put our hope so much in the systems, and I do think that has become a liability in the body of Christ, where we've turned the church into a corporation, and we elevate the process somebody else did rather than the source of that process, right? So I think, like, until the prayer meeting is the heartbeat of what we're doing, until and one of my mentors used to say, Nick, we're prayerful or we're prideful. Our knees are the door knockers of heaven. And I just think there's something about crying out to God, letting him birth something from within, and then letting him unleash from us all. And one thing we are seeing and working on right now, and this is a global effort, but we're really rallying people around the world to learn to share their testimony, and to join this anthem of every tribe, tongue, and nation, pointing to Jesus. And I think
Yeah.
in Revelations it says that we're going to overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. And so we just believe that now is the time to equip the everyday believer to make Jesus known everywhere, right? Whatever your microphone is, whether you're in a cubicle or whether you have a Facebook page, we need to make Jesus known.
Yes, and if we love the church, we'll go to church on Sunday morning. If we love the pastor, we'll go to church Sunday evening. But if we love God, we'll go to the prayer meeting.
Yes, I love that.
And we've got to make prayer a priority, don't we, Nick? We really do, and that's what's going to birth a spiritual awakening.
I'll encourage our young people, man, you better get used to and comfortable being around God, because you're going to be around him forever. And so if you don't get comfortable now, it's going to be real awkward in heaven, right? You really need to orient your life to say, man, am I enjoying the presence of God? Am I enjoying Jesus? Do I have the quiet place, right? I think it's so interesting when Jesus, commands his disciples, right? And he says, go into your room, close your door, pray to your Father who sees what's done in secret. And I think it is this secret life of the Christian, and it is the small meetings in the church. I mean, that is the engine room of the body of Christ, is the prayer closets of the saints. And so I think that's where the power is, right? It's like, I did an evangelism training 2 nights ago, and I said, the goal of evangelism isn't for you to go and do something. The goal of evangelism is for you to enjoy Jesus. Like, if you're enjoying something, it is contagious.
Yes.
If you are in love with something, it is contagious. And then I'll even say the goal of evangelism isn't necessarily even talking. The goal of evangelism is listening. It is listening to people and listening to the Spirit of God and saying, God, would you use me and send me and help me to be a friend of the people around me?
Absolutely, totally. My emphasis, Nick, when it comes to evangelism is just 3 words: praying, caring, sharing. That's it.
Amen.
And they're the 3 words. And, I often, when I introduce people to Jesus, I will often use the analogy of Revelation 3:20. Jesus stands at the door and he knocks. If you hear the knock, open the door, let Jesus in. Well, many of us have let him in, but we've locked him in, and
Yes,
we've got to unlock him, don't we?
yes, yes,
It's like
yes,
we've
yes.
invited him in, and then we've locked the door. We've got to let
Yeah,
Jesus out. And like you said, we are carriers of the presence of Jesus. And so wherever we are, let's just communicate him to others. I
yeah,
really, I love your passion, Nick, and I love the creativity of what you and your team are doing with Pulse. And my prayer is like yours, Lord, may we see and be part of a spiritual awakening in your nation and us across the pond here, and of course around the world. And really appreciated this opportunity to have you on Facing the Canon. Thank you for joining us.
thank you so much, J.John.
I really hope you've enjoyed that. And if you felt stirred, then look up Nick Hall, look up at Pulse, and maybe some of you who think you're evangelists, why don't you consider signing up and doing that discipleship course? Thank you so much for joining us on Facing the Canon, and please join us again.
But how can they call on him to save them unless they believe in him? And how can they believe in him if they have never heard about him? And how can they hear about him unless someone tells them? And how will anyone go and tell them without being sent? And then he told them, "Go into all the world and preach the good news to everyone."
He came, he died, he set me free, he's coming again. I get fired up about those kind of things.
The best is yet to come, and we will see the evangelization of the nation, the revitalization of the church, and the transformation of society.
How can we be that great friend, be alongside, but to be intentional in those spaces as well, to share Jesus where we're able.
It's Christ in me, the hope of glory. When I get on the streets, people see and feel and sense something of the gospel.
I'm telling you about one who has gone to hell and back for you, who's bled his own heart's blood for you, who loves you more than his own life. What do you reckon? Are you in?
There are strongholds in our culture that exist in people's minds, and we need the power of the Holy Spirit to see people's minds and hearts submitted to the Lord Jesus Christ.
The Evangelists Conference 2025. Book now, evangelistsconference.com.